Hello everybody, I'm Ray and welcome to a brand new video on the FNAR Studios channel. Today we will be taking a deep dive into the animated history of Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends. Now, before we get into the meat of the video, I am aware that Stuart Studios 5 has already made a video covering the history of Thomas's animation. I decided to make my video after having watched his because I noticed his video is missing quite a few animated portions of Thomas's history. Regardless, please go check out his video after watching mine, as there is a lot of good research and it has a lot of detail for the parts that he does cover. Now then, let's get into the history. After the failure of the 1953 pilot, no one tried to adapt the Railway series for a whole 20 years. In 1973, Andrew Lloyd Webber, who had loved the book since he was a child, wanted to create a musical TV series based on them. He was already quite famous for his many musicals, so he quickly set up meetings with the book's publishers, Kane Ward, and the author, the Reverend Wilbur Awdry. Webber and his team wrote some lyrics and drafted contracts, but there was a problem. The contract would have given Webber's company full control over all the books, characters, and any related media. Webber said that this was needed to get money from American investors, but Awdry was worried that Americans would ruin the series. No. Eventually, they had reached an agreement. A pilot episode was made in 1976, animated by Brian Cosgrove. Sorry if I butchered that. The pilot used 2D animation, similar to the style of Ivor the Engine. The characters looked like the ones in the original books, but had a unique design from Cosgrove, one of the biggest noticeable design quirks with the characters being their predominantly large noses. The pilot was shown in 1976, but it wasn't picked up because the American market wasn't interested. It's unknown how far the 1976 pilot got in production, who voiced the characters, or if it was in color or black and white. No footage from the pilot has been found, and it's unclear if any still exists. However, we do have behind-the-scenes images of Cosgrove animating the pilot. While the style for the pilot is certainly unique, I'm glad the show wasn't picked up, as the style is pretty deterring. However, it would be wonderful if we could learn more about the pilot, and maybe even get to see those lyrics that were written for it. Despite this pilot failing, a show was still made, having been released only 8 years later. The classic series of Thomas has quite a few instances of animation. I'll quickly gloss over one of them though, as it only semi-counts. The main visual style of the show can be seen as live-action animation, so let's quickly go over that. The show used models on sets with remote control eyes and various face masks for the characters. This style helped make the show stand out among its competition and to children. Now then, onto the other forms of animation in the classic series. In the episode Buzz Buzz, in which James gets stung by a bee, cell animation was used for whenever the bees flew on screen. The bees were animated by Peter Chang of the Magic Camera Company. Strangely, Chang and the MCC were only credited when the episode first released in 1992. In total, 4 of the cells from the episode were sold to the public on eBay. The owners of the cells being Flying Pringle, Isaac M6991, and Tom's Props, with the first cell having been in the possession of Blue Burke Boko, a member of the Soder Island Forums, who would sell it to an unknown buyer in 2015. This wasn't the only type of animation in the classic series, however. Many episodes had stop-motion sequences in them, such as Gordon and the Gremlin, Lady Hat's Birthday, and the aforementioned Buzz Buzz. Stop-motion sequences were also added to music videos, including James the Really Splendid Engine and Donald's Duck. These stop-motion sequences were used because many characters that weren't vehicles had limited movement, and required the use of stop-motion in order to portray their motions. After the 5th season of the show, the first film of the series would be released, which would feature the first instance of CGI animation for the series.
More Blackberry, more Blackberry.
Oh shit, Ray, you gonna get sued by whoever did that song. Alright. For the scene in Magic Railroad where Thomas puffs along through the magic buffers, Thomas was originally going to be green screened onto a painted backdrop depicting the titular Magic Railroad. The team didn't like how the green screen footage of the Gauge 1 prop looked with the backdrop, so they opted to use a fully CGI Thomas for the very first time. Thomas's animation was done by Core Digital Pictures, Gajdecki Visual Effects, I think that is, I don't know, and Command Post Toy Box. The model was based on his Tatma brass prop and featured 7 of his resin faces, those faces being his happy face, scared face, confused face, smiling face, shocked face, wincing face, and his worried/concerned face. The CGI Thomas was also used for when he fell off of Muffle Mountain and into the magic fucking railroad ditch thing. Whatever, we'll just say he no-clipped into the ground. Or, yeah, let's just go back to the television series.
Now, before we discuss the learning segments, I'd like to talk about something the fandom was freaking out about just a few years ago. That being this clip from Thomas to the Rescue. This clip surprised many when it was uploaded to YouTube. I could not find the original upload of the clip, but the one I could find was uploaded by Coco Coast on March 23rd of 2021. Supposedly, HIT was experimenting with adding CGI aspects to the show as early as in Season 8, this example showing CGI being used for Gordon blinking. Now, it is entirely possible that there is no blink there and the low quality of the footage is what's making everyone think there is a blink. If anyone has a high quality version of the clip and it clearly shows Gordon's blink being real, I will leave a pinned comment in the comment section. For now, however, I will be claiming that this blink is not real and it's just our mind playing tricks on us. Now then, on to the meat of this section.
Tonight, Thomas has an important job to do.
When HIT Entertainment restructured the show, they added intermissions in between episodes. These intermissions would be music videos or interactive learning segments. Some of these segments included specially shot model footage and stock footage, and the rest used CGI animation provided by Gizmo Animation Limited.
He has a snow plow, a new whistle, and a lamp.
These segments were animated in a software known as Autodesk 3ds Max. 16 characters were modeled for these animated segments, those being Thomas, Edward, Henry, Gordon, James, Percy, Toby, Emily, Diesel, Mavis, Salty, Cranky, Annie, Clarabelle, Harold, and Stanley. Some workmen were also modeled for these segments. The animation for these scenes was very basic, and the environments were as well. They weren't only featured in the learning segments, though. The intro with the slogan featured the Thomas model, and the Welcome to the Island of Sodor segment featured Cranky, Harold, and some squashed models of Thomas, Annie, and Clarabelle. After a few seasons with these segments, it was time to incorporate CGI elements into the show itself. In 2008, Stardust Pictures and Nitrogen Studios were commissioned to make a CGI test for the series. This test would be shots of the Season 11 episode, Thomas and the Stinky Cheese. All shots were recreated to a T with only a few creative liberties. A Don't Be Silly Billy test was storyboarded, but we don't know if any animation was done for it or not. From the shots made for the Stinky Cheese test, we can see that Thomas's face is much more model-like, and we see the first instance of bouncing being used for the engines. The bouncing isn't as drastic as in Big World Big Adventures, but isn't as subtle as the other CGI bounces, giving a nice, smooth middle ground. There is one scene, however, which is a little distracting. This being the scene where Thomas bumps into Bert. When this happens, we can see Thomas get squished, which isn't very pleasing to the eye. In a later scene, we see that the human characters are modeled quite similarly to the models seen in future seasons. From what we have seen, Thomas, Diesel, Bert, the Fat Controller, his bodyguards, some workmen, and possibly Airy were modeled for the test. We don't know if any other characters were modeled, as we only have 2 minutes of storyboards and about a minute of animation. After this test, we would go on to see CGI elements incorporated into the show itself. Season 12. What is there to say about Season 12? Well, I'll just say what we're all thinking. It's ugly. It's very, very ugly. But, to me at least, there's a bit of a charm with its ugliness. I mean, you can't say the season doesn't stand out among the rest. This season was the first to have CGI elements animated by Nitrogen Studios. They animated the faces on the vehicles, all of Harold, and every human and animal character. The faces were angled incorrectly at times, but served their purpose relatively well. This season also gave CGI faces to many characters who would never make appearances in the full CGI seasons, giving fans a small glimpse to what they would have looked like if introduced later down the line. Season 12's engine faces attempted to mimic the faces of the models, but didn't look too good doing so, as the model faces had many drastic changes in order to convey their emotions, changes which wouldn't look very good when transitioning between expressions and CGI. Luckily, the following year, Nitrogen Studios would learn from their mistakes. In 2009, we saw the release of Hero of the Rails, the first fully CGI production in the series. This film also featured animation by Nitrogen Studios. Greg Tiernan, one of the heads of the studio, was interviewed by the Sword Island forums in 2011 and shared many things regarding the studio's work on the show. When asked about his familiarity with the franchise beforehand, he stated that he and his wife, Nicole Stinn, other head of the studio, were both familiar with the early seasons of the show and the Railway series, which they both had a particular fondness for. Tiernan also said that once the studio was put in charge of the show's animation, they had read all of the books and watched every season up to that point, as well as learning as much about railways as they could to maintain historical accuracy. When asked about how the characters were moved into the new medium, Tiernan stated that the team had wanted to respectfully move Thomas from models to CGI and to honor its past. All 3D models were built from scratch in Maya, a popular 3D modeling and animation software, using the brass models as reference. He also stated that he had wanted the show to lean more into an Audrey influence, him doing so by staying as close as possible to Peter Edwards' Island of Sodor map. In a different interview on 98.3 Vancouver, a Canadian radio station, Tiernan told the host that the reason why Nitrogen had stopped working on Thomas was because they only wanted their team to focus on one single project. Based on the information we have, such as changes to the Nitrogen Studio website and the year that they had stopped working on the show, I believe it is safe to say that they stopped working on Thomas so that they could put full effort into their next big film. Sausage Party. Yeah. Everyone's favorite movie. Sausage Party. When Hit Entertainment was bought out by Mattel and Nitrogen Studios didn't return to animate Season 17, a new animation studio was hired. ARC Productions was brought on to take over for Nitrogen Studios in 2013. ARC took all of the assets that Nitrogen had made, as well as making their own for the show. Seasons 17 and 18, as well as their connected specials, had a certain look to them, with the lighting being noticeably worse than that of the previous studios. But for Season 19 and the rest of the show, they put a lot of money into improving their lighting and other aspects of the show's animation. However, these changes, along with an increased workload for Mattel, would lead to the studio filing for bankruptcy in 2016. But just 9 days after they had filed for bankruptcy, Jam-Filled Entertainment entered the picture and acquired all of the studio's assets, essentially taking over the studio. Jam-Filled would work on Journey Beyond Sodor as well as Season 21 of the show, which would include the bouncing that so many fans would come to hate. Their work on the show wouldn't stop there though, as a big rebrand was soon to come.
Jam-Filled would provide the animation for the 3 seasons of Big World Big Adventures, as well as the film of the same name. The film and seasons would continue to have the aforementioned bouncing, as well as a terrible, terrible change to the lighting that made everything just looks disgusting. Over time, the older models of the Steam Team engines would receive changes in the form of rivets and many other details being added onto them, which this just looks fucking ugly. I'm sorry, I don't like it. Mattel would then stop working with Jam-Filled after production ended on the Royal Engine, as they wanted a new animation style for the next rebrand of the show, and yeah, I think you all know where this is going.
Here comes Thomas on the #1 engine. Whoa! All engines go!
All engines go. The reboot this fanbase loves to hate. I'll keep this section brief as we don't know too much about this show's animation. A test was made that featured Thomas and Goran with different designs to those in the final reboot and the original series. I can only assume that test audiences couldn't recognize the show as Thomas and Friends, so they dialed back on the changes to the characters and made them a little more accurate to that of the previous show. So far, 2 seasons have finished airing, 1 is currently airing, 1 is to air next year, and a handful of specials have been released and are planned. So, there's a German Thomas Wooden Railway commercial, and it's cursed as hell. Yeah, I'll just let the ad speak for itself.
Hoppla! Hier kommt Thomas, die kleine Lokomotive. Er fährt klickety-klack durch seine lustige Welt und erlebt mit euch die tollsten Abenteuer. Macht Platz im Kinderzimmer. Vielleicht kommen Thomas, die kleine Lokomotive und seine Freunde ja morgen schon zu euch. Von begeisterten Eltern empfohlen. Natürlich nur echt von Bandai.
Well, this has certainly been quite the journey, don't you think? From the 1953 Webber pilot all the way to today's All Engines Go. I think we've learned quite a lot today. What's your favorite instance of animation being used in the Thomas series? I'd love to hear your answers, or read your answers, in the comments down below. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to boost engagement and so that I can get more views and work on more videos for you all. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Sayonara, folks.
Subscribe to Let's Just Game 123!
Like songs in the radio, every memory will come and go. Sometimes I wonder if I'm to blame, that those wistful days are now long gone. Back then you listened to my voice 24/7. Although I do miss the times we spent together, I'm so 2020.